Mr. Flippin, a bitter defeat in a hard-fought trial in Arkansas later caused you to make a lot of money. But what did it teach you about how to treat your clients?
I'm glad that you asked me that, because I have told this story to young lawyer groups because it's a real lesson in it. I represented an insurance company that had the workers' compensation on Aiken Porter Produce Company operation, and the truck driver was over in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, and he went over on purpose. He drove his truck over a bridge rail and down into a deep ravine at the Cato River Bridge on I-30 to keep from running into some people up ahead of him who'd had an accident. There was ice on the highway, and no one knew it was there. And he was hurt bad, and I don't know how he lived. So I took it on a contingent basis. It was subrogation, what it was. So I called up a lawyer friend of mine in Texarkana. I tried one of these Milan Arsenal product liability premature explosion cases with him in Texarkana, Arkansas, and he was widely respected and widely known and experienced. I knew he'd know a good lawyer in Arkadelphia, so I called Norman Russell, that was his name, and I said, "Can you recommend me a lawyer to help me in a case over in Arkadelphia, Arkansas?" He said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Mr. Lockadoo." He says, the firm was called Lockadoo and Gooch. So I went on the phone, I called Mr. Lockadoo, and he agreed to associate with me. So anyway, we ended up in the trial over there. I won't go into all particulars. Mr. Lockadoo died before trial, and his son, he agreed to carry on, and he's pointed to the bench. And then I was left with the lawyer over there that didn't do any trial practice, but I won't go into all of that. But we tried the case hard against a former congressman. And my client, while he was down in that truck with about 4 inches between the back seat, the metal of the back seat and the steering wheel, he said he got a call to preach. And I don't question that. So we got over at the trial and put him on the stand. Everything was going fairly well. I it done pretty good, but we had a short end of the stick. And because of the ice, and I was predicating the whole thing is that the cars up front didn't send a flagman back to warn him, but as to whether they had time to do it was the issue. Well, anyway, he just all at once got on a kick and didn't make a good witness at all. In fact, he just tried to lose the case, looked to me like. Made horrible statements about he should have done this and should have done that and should have known this. And I think it had something to do with his heart at the time. He was going into the Christian ministry, and he didn't want to hurt anybody, didn't want to sue anybody. Well, and I was out money. I'd paid my own way. Well, I was hurt, and rather than to tell him what a terrible witness he'd made, and everybody knew he had, a lot worse than he needed to, I just accepted the fact that he just did what he thought he ought to do, and I talked nice to him instead of talking sharply and maybe give him a good cussing, as I know some folks would have done. And he apologized for what a sorry witness he made. He did. He knew he'd done me in. Well, about 3 or 4 years later, he came to my office, and I lost that case. in Arkansas. Just plumb lost it. And not only that, but all my expense money and everything else. And but like I say, I was overly understanding of him, and I was awful glad I did. It wasn't accomplish anything to talk ugly to him anyway, but he had just purposely looked like caused me to lose that case, his own case. Of course, he'd have gotten everything over and above the workers' comp money I recovered. Well, several years after that, he came in my office with two men I'd never seen before. They were two stepbrothers, and it turned out that his mother and his stepfather had been in a terrible accident down in Alabama. Terrible. One was killed, and the other one had an eye put out, and horrible medical expenses, and a truck line had done it to him. A truck line had a truck driver run over them. And they were driving a compact car and just run clean over them. And we found out we had to contact the governor of Alabama, who later went to the penitentiary. He was a Primitive Baptist preacher, to get the highway department to give us a drug test. And as a local preacher in Milan, Tennessee, of the same denomination, knew the governor personally. We went to him. Somebody had that drug report. We all hung up. We finally got it, and this man was high on cocaine at the time of the accident, that is, the truck driver. We'll make a long story short. I'll kind of hasten through this thing. Those two cases brought 7-figure number. They brought dollars in 7 figures. And I've thought about this many times, is that we'd have never gotten that case if I hadn't accepted. I lost the case. And we had a hard time even getting this case because these two men, two stepbrothers, didn't know me, but he did. And they were arguing about what lawyer they're going to use. So we talked to them, we told them how we'd handle the case, and they went outside, and my office was up in front. And I could hit a boy out on the sidewalk talking to his stepbrothers, begging them to let me handle the case. And one of the words he told them, he says, he handled a case for me in Arkansas. And says, I know how hard he works, and says, he'll do a good job. And of course, I'd lost his case in Arkansas. He didn't tell them that, I don't think. But anyway, it goes to show that if you're nice to people and don't burn a bridge behind you, you never know when they're going to come back around the corner with something real good. That turned out to be that in the other case that we talked about, were the big money cases in the practice, and it all came from a lost case in Arkansas, but being nice to a fellow who had sort of done me in over there.
All right, your most memorable, or one of your most memorable criminal cases, State versus Foster?
Yes, sir. Every now and then you think, did I do the right thing when I stayed in the law practice? Did I do the right thing? I've never questioned that, really. You're in it, you just kind of stay with it, and at times it almost killed me. Stress, I had a hard time with stress, had a hard time with speech to begin with. But there was a fellow here in Milan, Tennessee, he and his wife were accused of selling drugs. And the facts of the case, an undercover agent went to their home, and the lady of the home, had a lot of mental trouble, and she was going back and forth to Western State, and they would give her these drugs for depression or schizophrenia. I don't know what all she had. But they were very poor people. They had a hard time going back and forth, and so the doctor down there just said, look, I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm going to give you a big supply. Well, you want to come down here and get so many at a time. He did that. Simultaneously, there was a young girl who'd been arrested on a drug case, and she agreed to be an informant and make cases for the state. And she was in their home, and she was under a lot of pressure a lot of pressure to make a case. And she didn't want to make one against her cronies, but she had a date one night with the Armstrong boy. And right in the home, she acted like she was real stressed out and she needed something for her nerves, and she kept talking and begging about it. And Mrs. Armstrong went back in back of the house where she had her medicine and got a few pills, called this girl begging her, gave it to him, and this girl reached in her pocket. They said, "We don't want any money, and we're not selling anything." But she got some marked money, laid it on the coffee table, and got in a big hurry to leave, and left. Officers came in the home, and there was marked money. Made a big case out of it, and most folks thought he was guilty, and I believed in him. I believed in him. And I just knew it was just like it happened. And I tried the case, and they couldn't pay me much. I never was one to want money up front when they couldn't come up with it, and if I really believed in the case. And anyway, tried that case, and on cross-examination, I was able to, and I put the man on the stand who had given the medicine, and on cross-examination worked out real good for me. And everybody had deserted him. He worked for the city. They had terminated him. Everything was bleak, and he had 2 daughters, and I didn't even know them. They came out of Chicago, and they came to the trial, and sat on the front row. But I'm not even sure I knew they were there. When the trial was over, for me, it was extremely emotional, for me. And the jury came back with an acquittal. And those 2 daughters came up to me, one on each side. I'll never forget it. I was wearing a light blue shirt. That's when wearing colored shirts, they're back in now. They were in at that moment in time, and hugged me and got each cheek next to mine. And their tears ran off their face and wet my blue shirt. They showed up. And I just stood there, and if all the angels of heaven had come down and been in my presence, I couldn't have felt any more satisfied, fulfilled, and all I could think of, thank God I made a lawyer. Thank God I made a lawyer. And that was the defining moment of my practice. And I think of it and think of it. We can do so much for people. And when you do something that you kind of feel like that you did your very best and it worked out right and the justice was done, it's a great feeling of fulfillment. That meant a lot more to me, cases, that one in particular and others somewhat similar, than the other figures where the big money was involved. That was the defining moment, I think, of the fact that I did right when I made a lawyer. Good. I want to say one more thing, and I think pretty well near conclusion, and I've had a lot of help. It's like Alex Haley talking about the turtle on the fence post. It took some help to get up there. When I'd have some files that I just didn't have an experience, I wasn't practicing with anyone else, Woody Sims up to Nashville was a longtime friend of my wife's family. My brother-in-law grew up with him, and I'd go to Woody and take my files, and the firm of Bass, Berry & Sims would have some expert in that, and they'd come up and kind of give me some guidance and open my file up and give me some copies of maybe a memorandum or something. And I know he was probably the one that nominated me to be Tennessee Bar Foundation fellow real early on when the guys were already been there for me. Then a guy like Shep Tate, that I could go down to Memphis. I had a big bankruptcy case, that Pug Vickers thing. I had the biggest claim in the pot. There was $1 million for Equitable. And I didn't know, I wasn't gonna turn it loose. I wanted to hold on if I thought I could learn enough to go ahead, and I went to Shep Tate's office and on other things, and he took his time off and went and got some files on this new bankruptcy law and explained to me what the cram down provision was. I didn't like it, but I learned about it. And there were men like that in the profession that helped me all along. I guess they felt sorry for me. I was the kind of country boy down here that didn't have a lot of experience. And that was the way it was all through my career, is friends have come to my aid when I needed it and have helped me ever so much. And anything I've amounted to in the profession, I give them tremendous amount of credit for it.
Mr. Flippin, tell us about appearing before the U.S. Supreme Court in argument and about your impressions of Earl Warren.
Oh, you know, Earl Warren was, people didn't think an awful lot of him. He was a political appointee as governor of California. And I got to, I don't know, I was kind of guilty of it too. And not only that, he came out with some decisions that were very unpopular. And I don't know, and but when I was there, he talked and he made me feel like that I was in the General Sessions Court of Carroll County. He had a way of relaxing people. His demeanor, his persona, let's say, was just absolutely marvelous. And I came away from the Supreme Court of the United States with a tremendous respect for the man. Incidentally, we lost the case. I mean, let's tell it all. And we lost the case, and it was whether or not a sales tax was on property purchased by an operating contractor with the title going to the federal government with government funds or with private funds being reimbursed. We lost the case. We didn't lose so much my part of it, but it was quite an experience.
Mr. Flippin, to go back to your experience in the legislature, these days graduating seniors from our high schools have career choices and career paths, not just college.
Yes.
But for the other who are inclined to other fields, they're vocational schools. Did you have anything to do with that?
Well, sir, yes, I did. That was probably one of the most satisfactory things I'd ever done. Is I sponsored in the state Senate the area vocational training school bill, and I knew so many kids want college material, and we needed to have an intelligent and skilled workforce. And people were talking about it, but it was expensive. And I talked to the governor about it, and he said, well, see, if you can come up with the revenue for it, certainly I'd be for it. So I came up with the idea of a tax on soft drinks. Tax on soft drinks. And soft drinks were Coca-Cola, and then was a nickel. That'd be just 6 cents. What do you pay for them now? 75, I think. But boy, the soft drink people had a powerful lobby, and I won't go into all the details about it, but it was powerful. And then I talked to Bill Snodgrass and some of the others up there who knew the number. Ed Bolin at the time, he later president of the University of Tennessee. He was in on the finance part of the state staff. Snodgrass. Harlan Matthews went to the United States Supreme Court. At one time, I had one on one elbow and one on the other when I was administrative floor leader to help me explain the bills. And they talked about putting a tax on utilities. And but nobody would even go there because it was so unpopular. Now, people would say, you can tax whiskey, tax cigarettes, tax cold drinks, but don't you put tax on drinking water. Well, that's what a tax on utility would have been. Well, I asked them to let me have a shot at it. And we drew the bill up to tax sales tax on utilities. I knew one thing, it'd all be collected. It wouldn't be anybody not reporting it all because it comes out on your utility bill. Well, it was a battle. And I think you'll find if you look up in the state senate, there was one sponsor who'd sign it, and that's me. But I forget who it was, but over in the House, we got a brave man over there to sponsor it. And we passed the bill in the Senate with 17 votes, and that's just what it took. And over in the House, they barely got it by there. And so we inaugurated the technical vocational training schools that are scattered all over the state now. First, we got one up here in McKenzie, Tennessee, that was in my district. Wasn't in my county. I wish it had been here, but it was up here in McKenzie. And then across the state, and every time I go by one, I get a good feeling. And everything else I've done is intangible. I don't get to see it. But I get to see that one. Yeah.
Is there anybody, Mr. Flippin, that you'd like to thank?
Oh, yes. I'm so flattered and so pleased and I'm appreciative that this is being filmed, because I'm told that not only can this be used in this program of the Tennessee Bar Foundation, put it in some kind of a library where it can be checked out, but my great-grandchildren who are yet unborn will have a chance to check this out and at least see and to hear something about their great-grandfather. And I want to thank the committee who picked me. It's a lot of fellows I think that should perhaps come before me in this sort of thing, but I'm honored and I appreciate it. I want to thank Barry Bernstein who asked me if I would do this, and she didn't have to twist my arm, I'll tell you that. And I want to thank Judge Webb. I want to thank you for answering the question. You knew a little bit about me because you practiced with me for a while, and I wish you still were.
And on behalf of the Tennessee Bar Foundation, we want to thank you for your participation.